Asking me about the circle and why is it so important to be cantering around on a perfect circle. It's really not about the circle. The reason that I use the circle is to get control of my horse's emotions. That being said, is that most people hold their horses a little bit like this when they're going around in the circle or wherever. And then by doing that, this here is not doing anything. It's actually, I see lots of people riding with their toes in and their legs out because they're scared if they touch them with their legs that they're going to squeeze their horse into the bridle even more and they're going to have to pull more. So the reason that I use the circle is it makes me push with my body. Therefore, if I'm pushing with my body and my reins are loose, what's going to happen is, like I said on the previous videos, is these horses are going to want to go home because they're right brain, and that's where they get brushed and fed. So when they're right brain, their reactions are, out of fear, is to be reactive instead of responsive. Left brain, they're being responsive. So I'm using the circle not to counter a perfect circle. It's about using it to get control of their emotions. Why do people ride in a round pen? People ride in a round pen because there's a fence there and the horse follows their fence. They don't have to be holding on to their horse, and then they can show their horse some maneuvers. And because their horse is left brain in the round pen, the maneuvers sink in and the horse digests them maneuvers. The only problem is you can't ride in a round pen all the time. So what happens when you get outside of the round pen? Your horse gets emotional, it wants to go back home where the round pen is or the feed is, and you end up holding them the whole time like this and you're not pushing them with your body. That being said, why do you want to push them with your body? Because I want something that tells my horse to go forward, and eventually I want these to tell my horse to whoa. Where does that come in to play? So over here I have this makeshift barrel, and if this is my approach to this barrel, I need my horse to come back to me as I'm approaching this barrel, so he gets his feet closer together and gets athletic. So if I'm pushing my body and my horse knows about my focus and my push, then eventually he will learn that when my body lets off to come back to me, and from my prior work I can use my reins to back that up with. My circle is also used, so in adding to the circle also, is that it's funny that when people tend to hold their horses a little bit, their horses tend to go faster because they don't know what to do with this bridle, and it's just something that you've taught the horse that you're a little bit tight, and that's what makes you hold on to the reins, so it actually makes them go faster and your body is doing nothing again. So that being said, once you start to get impulsion by, like I said, pulling them through the middle for leaning at the barn, or lifting them up when you get on the far side of the circle for leaning on the barn, eventually I may lope that circle, canter that circle around there for 10 minutes, one direction. Pretty soon they get a little bit tired, as long as I'm not aggressive and get them right brain, and eventually they get a little bit of impulsion, and now I'm pushing them in my circle. Sure, at first they're kind of running out from underneath me because I have them on a loose rein. I keep pulling them from building that round pen. They lean it towards home. I pull them through the middle. When they're on the far side of the circle, I stand them up. So, and that being said also, there's the comfort discomfort. Why do I pull them through the middle of the bullseye? You've seen on my previous video how I dropped a hat in the middle to represent the middle of a dartboard, because that is a lot of work when you got to pull your horse 90 degrees through the middle of the bullseye, and you do it and you do it and you do it, and pretty soon as your horse gets a little tired and gets left brain, he's going to say to himself, that's a lot of work leaning on the outside of his legs and his reins, so I'll just stay in between his feet. Same thing for the inside. You just push them into their face, get that athletic maneuver for leaning when they're farthest away from the barn. Get it stood up, get it stood up, get it stood up. Do it over and over and over. Pretty soon they just decide that it's a lot of work to lean on the outside or lean on the inside, and they get a little bit of impulsion. Once they get a little bit of impulsion, I didn't talk about it, then I'm going to soften an inside rein and soften an inside rein and soften an inside rein, and it starts to get that little bit of an arc. And knowing that, I haven't brought it up on this video about when you're in a right lead, look how my body is augmented. The left side of my body's back, the right side of my body's ahead. So my left knee is holding that shoulder up, my left leg is back, holding the hip in. Right leg holding this part up. It's just natural. When the horse's right side is ahead, going in a right lead, the right side of my body's ahead. Left side, right side, vice versa, right? So that being said, once your horse gets left brain and gets learning how to stay in between your feet and your hands, he feels these little suggestions on you being in unison with his body. If he can feel a fly on his back, he can feel your body, whether it's in a left lead or a right lead, if you're holding the hip in. Okay, now, one thing I don't want to, if this gets on social media, is get to where you're really holding stuff in. You just get your body in that position. Don't go to holding parts. You just do like I said and rein in or out. Pretty soon your horse gets a little bit of impulsion, and then you can work on some flexion, work on that inside rein, get him looking where he's going, get him looking where he's going. So eventually you're going to get an arc going this way in a right lead, and eventually you're going to go the other direction and you're going to get the arc going like this, a natural arc going in the left lead, because you've pulled and softened that corner of his mouth. You've softened this corner of his mouth. You get them two arcs that are going like this, because if you're in a right lead or a left lead, and then you start pulling on two reins at the end of your, once you get some impulsion on my circle, I'll do that all on the first day. I'll pull on two reins a little bit and turn them two arcs into this arc, which is this collection where I'm pulling on two reins, and eventually when you pull on two reins and say the word easy and pull on two reins coming into your barrel and show your horse that you need him to gather up and get athletic for that turn, that's where the circle comes in. As you've done all of them things on that circle, so when you take it to the event, your horse has some kind of idea on what you're after when you pull on two reins and what that bridle's all about. Okay, so that being said, once I get that done, here's the cool part. You get some impulsion, and at the top of your circle in the middle of the arena, when you're done, you say the word, the W word. At the top of the circle, you come through the middle and say the W word, and eventually, and your horse will go canter, trot, walk, walk. As long as he's trying, just let him come down to a stop. Pull him off that bridle a little bit like this. Pull him off that bridle a little bit like that. Because the first thing that a horse does when they don't know how to stop right is stick their nose out. So you just stop, pull on that bridle after they've made the attempt to stop. If they don't make any attempt to stop at all, just let them run into the bridle, pull them down into a whoa, bump them off that bridle. Don't back them up, because it's all about them staying soft on the bridle. Okay, so now you've got that stop going there, and you sit there and you have a cigarette, you have a whiskey, you have a coffee until the sweat dries a little bit. Turn around and go the other direction. Well, guess what? That stop that you have made there, you do that every time, every day, and when you're done for the day, you ungirt, put your breast collar up, lead them back out of the arena, put them away. You do that 30 days in a row, and pretty soon that place where I stop all the time is my X. Well, I can start taking that X to anywhere in the arena. So all of a sudden, because that's my stopping point and that's my X, guess what? I can turn my transition spot eventually, woo, this is my X now, coming into that barrel. I've used that X when I'm just doing my training. Now I start shifting that X to other parts in the arena, and I sit there and I have a cigarette or I have a coffee, a whiskey, whatever, until the sweat dries a little bit. So pretty soon you're getting in tune with just taking, because you've got impulsion and you're pushing your horse around the circle, now you take the life out of your body, and pretty soon your horse is just dragging his ass because he knows he's going to get to sit and rest there until the sweat dries. And you get to start taking that X and using it in your competition in places where you need to pull on two reins and get your horse to come back to you. The reins come after the body and they back up the W word and your body for taking life out of your body. Then you pull on the reins. Might bump them a little bit, sit there. You can start using that place where you've stopped, that X, and carry that X wherever, to Houston, Fort St. John, whatever. They start understanding that because horses live for comfort, right? So, and the other thing about that circle is same thing. We've all taken our horses to a new arena, take them away from home, first time. We're starting to get them ready for some competition, so we take them to the competition, and there's team ropers swinging ropes and trailers and horses going everywhere. Just stick them on that circle. Put them on that circle, canter them around. They're going to be a little uptight. Pull them through the middle, stand them up. Pretty soon they're going to know, oh, this is the circle. They let themselves down, they get left brain. Then you can work on your flexion a little bit. You can work on your X, and there you go. Now you understand a little bit more about why I use that circle. That circle is used for the majority of my training. Not that after I get good at the circle, yes, I'm going to show you the third part of my program where I do some cantering squares, cantering smaller circles, cantering straight lines with the W word used. A lot when people are starting to compete and take their horse to competition is they've never done anything fast in their training. So they've cantered around there. If we know that a horse has a fast, medium, and a slow speed, they're doing everything at a slow canter. So I use the circle to run fast circles too. Same principles apply. You lean out, I pull you through the middle. You lean in, I stand you up with some fast circles. Then I come through my X, I sit back, say the word easy, pull on the reins, horse comes back to me. I didn't ask for him to stop. I just asked him to go from a medium fast canter to a slow canter. Pull the slack, and at first they might stop there because that's their stopping spot. Pet them. Pet them. Pretty soon you're going to turn that stop into just changing into a slower gait or a slower phase of the gait. So I'm going from a fast canter to a medium canter. I use that circle, same thing. If they can't handle that circle going fast, then you go ahead and start running the barrels and put some speed on them, and it's 99% of them aren't going to take to doing things perfect around the barrels. You're going to have to handle them. But being you haven't ever handled them at that speed away from the barrels, now when you're at the barrels you have to handle them and you frustrate them, and some of them take it to heart and you can have a lot of problems there. So again, using that circle and putting some speed on that circle, same rules apply, but then using that X to get them to come back to you. In the end, I'd love to say the word easy, pull the slack out of the reins, and have them come to a slow canter and keep driving forward. I never go into my transition period or part on my barrels and pull their ass into the ground. That just gets them sticking their nose out faster and harder on the bridle. So I just say the word easy, let them run into my bridle, and hopefully keep them pedaling up into the hole, into where I need them to be, and rest and let the sweat dry. You do it and you do it and you do it. You got 3 different barrels. Just run them up into the transition period, and you might have to do it way sooner than expected. So exaggerate to teach and refine as you go along. is you're getting up to that spot where it's the normal transition spot for your horse to come back to you into the barrels. You might have to triple that backwards and start saying the word easy and taking the slack out so his brain can work and get the message, oh, and then he might, you might be, 20 yards further up the arena than you'd like to be, but you can just let him pedal up to where you'd like him to be and sit there and let the sweat dry. So learning about that circle, that it's not in review about cantering a perfect circle. It's about using that circle to get impulsion, and then when you get impulsion, you can start adding flexion, and then you can take that flexion and stop in the middle of the arena, sit there, let the sweat dry, and then you can take that into fast circles. And then you're prepared for when you get to your smaller circles with speed in your competition, that they know how to handle that speed and they'll let you maneuver them body parts around with some flexion. So other than that, like I said, you can take, and then the cool part is you can take that circle, whether it's Fort St. John, you can take it to Fort Worth, you can take it to Saskatchewan, take that circle anywhere you go. Take that X anywhere you go. All right?